Today, for once, is a good day. Assange is free. Long live the WikiLeaks. Much to Donald Trump's chagrin, Julian Assange is a free man. He walked right out of prison. He will not be deported to the United States. Or extradited, rather. He will not be facing the death penalty. He will not be executed. All things that fly completely in opposition to Donald Trump's policy when he was president. I don't often say this, but thank you, Joe Biden. Joe Biden managed to fix a problem that the Trump administration started. This is like I think this is the one time it's happened. Trump did something bad. Joe Biden walked it back and fixed it. I mean, I guess you can kind of half count the Yemen thing, but Trump didn't start the Yemen war. I don't think that Trump ever really even knew that we were at war in Yemen. After all, he thought that he ended the war in Syria and didn't even know that that was going on. So they probably never even told him that the Yemen war was going on. So but the Assange thing was 100% Trump. It was his guy that put it forward, Mike Pompeo. He was in charge of that. And the Trump administration wanted to extradite Assange and put him to death. They wanted to execute him. Now, of course, they couldn't say that overtly because then the United Kingdom would not be able to extradite him because that's against British law. You can't extradite. Great Britain doesn't permit the death penalty, and so they can't extradite someone to a country where they will be facing the death penalty. And so instead, I believe the Department of Justice under the Trump administration lied and said they only wanted like life in prison or something. But really they wanted the death penalty. And what was the death penalty for? It was for publishing a video that was leaked by somebody else to Julian Assange. Julian Assange got a hold, as a foreigner, as an Australian, got a hold of some video which showed American soldiers executing journalists during the Iraq War. Something that you would think the American media would find quite troubling. You would think that this is something that the American media would be happy got out. They were not happy. They were very upset because I guess they worked very hard to cover this up, including Reuters, the company whose employees were slaughtered by American soldiers. And Donald Trump, who's so proud of opposing the Iraq War, also thought that this was a terrible offense. Nobody should know this. Kind of like the JFK assassination. Trump says, oh my God, the details of the JFK assassination are so terrible, I can't tell you. It's so bad, only I, Trump, am qualified to know this information. The average American, they have no right to know what happened to JFK and what the CIA did to him. And so Trump feels the same way about these poor Reuters journalists who were just, trying to film the Iraq War and give us, back in the West, information on what was happening during that war. They were real journalists, unlike the likes of Dana Bash, who will be hosting the CNN presidential debate. Dana Bash always sitting in her comfy Washington studio. I think Jake Tapper, too. I don't think Jake Tapper reported on the ground during the Iraq War. I think Jake Tapper was in D.C. the whole time, although I'm not 100% certain, so I don't want to condemn him. But I'm 99% sure that Dana Bash never once set foot outside of the Washington, D.C. studios, unless it was maybe a trip to CNN headquarters in Atlanta. And to be fair, Julian Assange also, was not reporting live from Iraq. He was a conduit. Never once did Julian Assange, hack or steal any American secrets. All he did was publish things that people brought to him. He published evidence, documents, videos that whistleblowers from within governments, not just the United States government, brought to Assange that they thought the public should be allowed to know. And for that service to the American people, Julian Assange was labeled a traitor to America, hilariously enough, despite the fact that he is not American. He's I don't think has he ever set foot in America? I'm not sure. He certainly doesn't live here. He's Australian, and yet he is somehow a traitor to America. He was guilty of espionage somehow, even though he never spied on anybody. The only people guilty of espionage are within the United States government. Every three-letter agency is guilty of espionage. So now that he has pled guilty, I'm interested if this precedent will lead to a rash of new prosecutions under the Espionage Act. After all, the Espionage Act was passed by one of America's most tyrannical presidents, Woodrow Wilson, to stop anti-war sentiment and dissent against the World War I of all things. The one war that I think universally people in America agree was a bad idea. The Espionage Act that these people worship so much was passed in order to make it illegal for people to oppose World War I, which, again, this is conventional historical analysis at this point. The consensus is that had America not entered World War I, there probably would have been no rise of Adolf Hitler, no Holocaust, no World War II. And so the Espionage Act is like this great pillar holding up all of this evil. And the way it would seem, the way they used it to prosecute Assange for publishing a leak from the U.S. government, it would seem that maybe they could go after anyone who even reposts something that the government wants to claim is classified in their property. If anything leaks from now on, nobody's allowed to talk about it. Nobody's allowed to post about it on the internet. Nobody's allowed to share screenshots. Maybe they'll try and throw Elon Musk in prison next, shut down the websites that people are sharing these on social media, then maybe going after social media users themselves. You retweet whatever the modern equivalent is of a live leak video of American soldiers slaughtering civilians. You retweet that, and then all of a sudden you have the FBI knocking down your door saying that you're in violation of the Espionage Act because you retweeted a video that makes the American government look bad. And I'm not blaming Assange for taking the plea deal and setting this precedent. I'm very happy for him that he's now finally going to get to meet his two youngest children outside of prison. If I were in his shoes, I would have taken it in an instant. But even for him as a foreigner, this is a bad precedent because now that this precedent has been set, they could go after him again. On similar trumped-up charges that are just as absurd. But more likely, or more importantly, I think in the future, other people could be tried under similar circumstances. Most likely actual American citizens, because I think it's much easier to make the case that an American citizen is in violation of the Espionage Act, an American citizen in America, or just somebody else who happens to be in America. Julian Assange, as I said, was not in America. He was an Australian in Australia, and he also traveled to other countries. And eventually he was kidnapped by the British police. And so none of that has been rebuked. None of that has been overturned. All of that could just happen to somebody else now. The U.S. government didn't lose. It just wasn't they just did not win a total victory. This was a negotiated surrender, because the process for Assange has been the punishment. He's lost, a decade of his life now that he's been hiding out in London. And then, eventually in 2020, I guess it was, they finally threw him in prison. And he's been living in Belmarsh prison, which I'm sure is not nice. Now he's finally out. So I guess now we just have to see what'll happen next, and what's next for his life, most importantly, how this precedent will be used in the future. And I hope, because this was something that was done by the Biden administration, that Trump doesn't, he doesn't fall for his normal instinct and say, well, Biden did it, must be bad, and so therefore I'm going to be very hard against, because remember, Trump, he was so mad at leakers when he was president, people leaking things that made him look bad. Hopefully he's not going to go full spook defense squad. Trump needs to remember, hey, these people who Assange hurt, those are the people who hurt you, Trump. Remember in 2020 or 2016 it was, that's when it was, 2016, a long time ago, 8 years ago, when he said, we love the WikiLeaks because they made Hillary look bad. The problem is Trump has no principles. And so, in 2016, sure, I think he genuinely meant he did love the WikiLeaks because they made Hillary look bad. But in this case, because Biden has gone soft on Assange, that must mean, okay, well, Assange's a bad guy. Trump, his advisors told him, oh no, we want Assange dead. And so I don't see how you're going to convince him otherwise. Unless he had better advisors around him, which every indication shows that Trump has as bad or worse advisors as he's ever had. And so I'm pretty black-pilled on Trump himself. There's all that talk from like Bannon saying, hey, we're going to abolish the administrative state. We're going to completely gut it. And MSNBC is clutching their pearls. And I'm going, gee, Steve, I wish you were right. I wish that were true. But just based on everything I've seen, you can't on the one hand say, hey, we're going to gut the administrative state, and on the other hand say, we're going to execute Assange. These are contradictory goals. Either you want Assange dead because you're trying to protect the administrative state, because you want to protect a bureaucracy, because you want to protect the deep state, or you're trying to abolish the deep state. You see Assange as a great ally. You see him as a great hero of America, even though he's not even American. Isn't that pathetic? It took an Australian to publish these things, to reveal these truths to the American people. And when a foreigner goes out of his way to do something for us that doesn't benefit him, that doesn't benefit his country, that only benefits us as Americans, only benefits our country, this is how we repay him. It's disgusting. So anyway, with that said, I'll see you folks back here in the next one.